Right, the flip side of the happy ending around Isak is the Marc Guehi situation. Let's talk about how this all unfolded then, shall we? Because this always felt more in the balance, I think. Whilst the Isak one was never cut and dried, even as we headed into sort of Sunday night, Guehi one always, especially when he plays, and obviously plays and scores. Like,
It was
a brilliant goal, yeah, but you did just wonder, like, what is the likelihood? What are the chances? And obviously deadline day comes around, then it starts to ramp up. Talk us through your understanding of how that all played out.
Yeah, so Oliver Glasner has made no secret of it, really. He was always steadfast and determined to keep Marc Guehi. And if he couldn't keep him, he was insistent that a replacement had to be brought in. So Liverpool tabled the offer earlier this month, didn't he? 35 million with a 10% sell-on clause. And it wasn't necessarily rejected as such. It was almost just left on the table and, see what developed. And Palace obviously beat Villa handsomely on Sunday night and then make a move for Julio Wigo, don't they, at Brighton, and it looked like he was coming in on loan. So Guehi gets the green light. I think it was round about probably mid-afternoon that he can go and have his medical. So it was all done for him to have his medical in London. And then, Liverpool sent staff down there to oversee that, and he gets through at least part of it. And then the deal gets pulled, doesn't it? Oliver Glasner backstage, as it were, with Steve Parish. A few reports have come out that he threatened to resign, and I don't think they've been, dismissed or rejected. So very sort of high-level, frank discussions between the Palace chairman and his manager. And Steve Parish admitted at Wembley that you can't just allow players of this value and this importance to leave for nothing. Essentially, Glasner's called the bluff, and I think Palace weighed it up and thought, well, if he goes through with this threat, we're going to lose our captain, we're going to lose our manager. We've got a European campaign coming up, the first ever one. This is one of the greatest teams we've ever had, Crystal Palace at the moment, and all for 35 million that they can't spend until January. So I think weighing it all up, they've accepted that Marc Guehi, as much as they would have liked to have ended his time on a high note, pat on the back and well done for leading us to the FA Cup, you've had to pull the plug on it. He doesn't get his move. And as a result, now some reports from people who are well connected at Crystal Palace, Ed Aarons at The Guardian, that Marc Guehi is very unhappy with how it's all played out. So you can't really blame him for that, because he has acted impeccably. He's carried on playing. He's helped them qualify for Europe. He's got them some important points in the Premier League. And then he doesn't get his move. So we'll see what happens with that, whether Liverpool return in January or happy to wait it out until next summer where they can get him for nothing. And that might automatically just be an Ibu Konate replacement, and they can maybe look elsewhere for another centre-back. But it's a shame for him. And I think it probably just stops Liverpool getting a full 10 out of 10 for me for the transfer window.
Well, we were in 11 out of 10 territory for me. If we okay, I'll be dead honest with you. I told a few different radio stations that on Monday because that was just beyond our wildest. If it wasn't already, I think Guehi would have been the icing and the cherry on top of that particular cake.
Maybe we were getting a bit greedy, weren't we?
Possibly. Greedy with Guehi, is that thing that works? But yeah, I do think it was not a necessity. That's too big a stretch, but would have been really important and nice, I think, to have that extra depth in there, albeit Joe Gomez was exceptional again when he came on at the weekend. But yeah, it's a fascinating, and this was a real, when we look back on deadline days, this is a real sort of like proper deadline day story. He's coming, he's going, there's a third party involved in Igor. Apparently Steve Parish at a spin class mid-afternoons we can't
I saw that.
Which I have massive respect for, by the way. I'm a big spinner myself, so I don't hate him for that. Whilst I'd have loved him to have been available on the phone a little bit more to get the deal done, I quite a lot of regard for him doing a bit of spin class mid-afternoon. But yeah, as I say, this will Liverpool again. Maybe this tells us, Paul, and you alluded to it earlier on, this is probably an example of why Liverpool don't get involved in much deadline day drama, because this sort of stuff can happen. Yeah,
100%. You leave yourself at the mercy of the variables, which is often a crazy period in football, isn't it? And, Liverpool prefer to be sitting back with Sky Sports News on and the feet up and a cup of tea and a biscuit and just watching the madness unfold. But this time they didn't really have an option. Certainly with Isak, we know the situation around that, and it wasn't necessarily straightforward, cut and dry. But with Marc Guehi, perhaps they could have been a bit more proactive earlier in the window. I said week after week on this show that Liverpool were playing a game of chicken with Palace, and they were relaxed to leave it until late in the window to try and knock that fee down a little bit. And it looked as though they'd play the blinder, but when you do let it go this far to the wire, you are sometimes at the mercy of things happening elsewhere, and that is what has happened here. So, Igor, did he get his move to West Ham in the end?
I think he did.
He must have done, mustn't he? I haven't even seen it. But
I think it was around game time, wasn't it, why he pulled the plug on the Palace? That's the reports.
Right. I mean, he was coming in for their captain, wasn't he? So he probably would have played. And particularly, they've signed a young lad from Toulouse, haven't they, for 22 million or something, 19-year-old. It doesn't look as though he was the adequate successor for Guehi that Glasner was desperate for. So, I've seen a few Liverpool fans sort of criticise, Oliver Glasner for this. And people come at it with the one-eyed tribalism, but that's what you want from a manager, fighting to keep your best players, don't you? So, fair play to him on that. Absolutely no qualms or criticism from my perspective. But it's going to be interesting now if he is approached by a big team in the Bundesliga, like Bayer Leverkusen, who are in need of a head coach, and see what happens. Or maybe Ruben Amorim's situation develops further at Manchester United, and Glasner might be an outstanding candidate for that. So, yeah, he's do as I say and not as I do. We shall find out, I guess.
Yeah, and fair play to him, as you say, for having that stance and sticking to it. I think it takes a lot. And I know, he's in a very strong position now, as having done a great job at Crystal Palace. Obviously, brought in the FA Cup, brought in the Community Shield as well. About to embark on that European. He's a really good manager, yeah. But his stock is high, and he knew his stock was high going into the conversation. So if they'd have turned around and said, "Sorry, off you go," then he'd have had clubs clamouring for his services. I'm certain of it. But yeah, it's an interesting one. Obviously, for what it's worth, for my 2 cents worth, I think shared, not blame but responsibility should be taken in terms of not getting the Guehi deal over the line. People looking at Marc Guehi and saying he should have acted in the same manner that Visser and Isak did. I don't subscribe to that personally, but then people are blaming Glasner. Steve Parish comes into it. I think Liverpool have got a role to play by not pushing the button a few weeks earlier, personally, if they could have even done that, you know, because again, come down to deadline day and this sort of stuff can happen. You touched on it a moment ago in terms of whether we return in January. Let's use that for now. Let's say Liverpool are ready to do that and willing to do that. In terms of the figure, in terms of like what that looks like, you'd imagine it'd be a cut price deal at that point, wouldn't you, with even less time left on his deal. Yeah,
I mean, it already is, isn't it? You know, they rejected 60 million roughly from Newcastle last summer. 4 bids in the end, which tells you how difficult Crystal Palace can be to negotiate with, which is entirely their prerogative. So if Liverpool were getting him for 35 a year later, and now he's heading into the final 6 months of his contract, the last window where Palace can get a fee for him, you'd imagine it's going to have to drop maybe even by 10 million, 20, 25 million, something like that for him. So I guess a lot depends on what Liverpool's state of play is in January. You know, we can't really speculate too much because a lot is dependent on the situation at the time. Liverpool are riding high with 4 fit centre-backs and they don't really need to make the move. Then they might be better off just waiting and saving themselves even, you know, a little bit of a cut price fee. So let's wait and see what happens. If Liverpool do have 1 or 2 injuries around the centre-back situation, or if Joe Gomez is having to play at right back, because Conor Bradley might be out, Frimpong's moved up because of the AFCON, you know, whatever it may be, then the option is there, I'm sure. And he's already, you know, confirmed that he wants to move to Liverpool. His exit video had already been, you know, recorded and pieced together by Palace's media team. So this came really close to being done. So, you know, I can't see a whole lot changing, certainly for Marc Guehi's mentality and viewpoint in the next few months. So, yeah, I think we'll just have to wait and see whether it is January or the summer. But I think we can say on pretty certain ground now that Marc Guehi will become a Liverpool player. Yeah,
it certainly looks that way, doesn't it? But again, I put in the agenda here, there's still that risk of hijack, because whilst that deal didn't get done, the deal sheet might have gone in, but he didn't become a red immediately. All of a sudden, when you get to foreign clubs can start coming, can't they, in January, and often pre-contract agreements. So again, I think man of his word and consummate professional definitely cover Marc Guehi. So I'd imagine there isn't much concern there, but still, again, whilst he isn't a Liverpool player, it's open to this possibility.
It is, yeah. And you think someone like Chelsea might come in, because Chelsea just do Chelsea things, don't they? And he's obviously already been there as a younger player. So, that would be my one slight, you know, keep an eye on that one, because you never know what they're going to do. But generally, it does seem as though he was desperate to move and didn't quite get it. So, And I don't think you can attribute any blame to him, really, because he didn't do an Isak or Wissam and throw his toys out the pram. You know, let's face it, Isak is Sweden international. He's played in Spain and Germany and then moved to Newcastle 3 years ago. Johan Visser moved to Brentford whenever that was, 2-3 years ago. So these aren't players who've come through the ranks at their respective clubs, whereas Marc Guehi is a South London lad, and he made that pretty clear at the end of the game on Sunday that he loves the club and essentially he wouldn't do anything to ruin the relationship he's got with the supporters there, having skipped them to the FA Cup just a few months ago. So, yeah we can't criticise Guehi for not disrupting the cause at Palace there, or acting in a way that has drawn criticism for his activism in the last few months.
No, absolutely not. And again, club captain, and you can tell he takes that with a lot of sort of, for what it's worth, takes it at face value, if you like. And I think he deserves a lot of credit for how he conducted himself throughout. Just a shame he didn't get his move in the end. Nice guys finish last and all that, don't they?
That was a clip from JNO Insight. To check out the whole show, head to redmenplus.com or click the link in the description.